Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today we return to our How to Survive Battle Analysis series, which helps you find the optimal path of survival. So far, we've looked at the muddy trenches of Bimbam and the terrifying forest of Endor. These battles took place on challenging terrain that significantly changed the tactics necessary for survival. Today, we venture to an even more exotic battlefield, the watery depths of Mon Cala. Now, just as a reminder, this video is not about being a hero or even being honorable. This is a video about being practical and preserving one's life above all else, even if that means being a coward. Because we care about all you troopers out there, and we don't want anyone to be a hero. Leave that kind of stuff up to the guys with plot armor. This video will be split up into 4 sections, starting off with the background of the planet and the combatants that you might face, along with what kind of training and equipment you might need, followed by a section that details what exactly you need to do to survive the Battle of Mon Cala. Now, Mon Cala has always been on my list of favorite planets that I would like to visit in the Star Wars galaxy. Mon Cala was an ocean-covered world that was equally beautiful as it was dangerous and terrifying. Known as Dock by the local inhabitants, this Earth-sized planet had a Type 1 breathable atmosphere along with a 21-hour day and night cycle along with a 398-day year. The oceans of Dock were teeming with life, from gigantic monsters to several sentient beings like the Moapa and the whale duns. But these weren't the important sentient beings, these were just stupid jellyfish and whales. The 2 major factions of sentient species inhabiting this planet were the fish-like Mon Calamari and the squid-like Corans. Culturally speaking, the Mon Calamari were considered more peaceful and open-minded than the Corans, who were perceived as more aggressive and isolationist. This could be potentially due to the fact that the Mon Calamari typically lived closer to the surface, whereas the Corans preferred the depths of the ocean. Nothing like symbolic racial preferences to let you know which species are evil and which aren't. The Mon Calamari and the Corans had a surprisingly peaceful relationship despite their cultural differences. They were united by the Mon Cala ruling monarchy, usually led by a member of the Mon Cala species. Despite having similar technological levels, the Mon Cala surface cities and shipping yards connected the planet of Dock to the outer world, which gave them leverage in their relationship with the Corans. However, the famous Mon Calamari shipyards in orbit depended on the Corns' deep-sea mining operations, and so for generations this economic codependence created stability on this world. During the Galactic Republic period, Count Dooku and the Confederacy of Independent Systems sought to exploit the cultural differences between the Corns and the Mon Calamari. The Mon Calamari monarchy was fully integrated with the Republic and extremely loyal to its democratic institutions. But certain members of the Corn faction were more wary of the wider galaxy, some to the point of being xenophobic. The Republic was heavily controlled by human leaders, and the Corn generally viewed the human species as crude. This most likely was due to their squid-like mouths, which made it very hard for them to speak our language, which had become the galactic standard. Rift Hampson, a Karkadon who served as a Separatist ambassador to the Corns, quickly started disrupting the peace between the 2 species. Rift Hampson was a skilled military leader and warlord, and more importantly, a freaking shark. He used Confederate resources to help establish the Corn Isolation League, a paramilitary organization thinly disguised as a political faction. They rebelled against the Mon Calamari-led government and sought to create their own government structure. The untimely death of the 82nd monarch, King Yas Kolina, created a temporary power vacuum that emboldened the Corn revolutionaries. Unbeknownst to most, Rift Hampson had assassinated the former king in order to speed up the Corn rebellion. The Corn Isolation League had been stockpiling weapons and vehicles for war for some time now. It was relatively easy to do this because the Mon Cala rarely ventured into the ocean's depths because of their biological limitations. The Mon Cala could not swim deeper than 30 meters without a dive suit or some other kind of protective gear, whereas the squid-like Corns could swim at depths of up to 300 meters without any gear. The Corn mining associations on the planet also had a long-standing relationship with the Commerce Guild, which they would oftentimes ship excess raw materials to. So it was relatively easy for the Trade Federation to supply the Corn Isolation League with Orca droids, manta droid subfighters, and other aquatic weapons, including the terrifying cyborg jellyfish known as the Hydroid Medusas. The Corns and the Mon Cala used similar underwater projectile weapons in battle that could also double as melee staff weapons. The biggest tactical advantage the Corns did have was their ability to transfer from the deeper areas of the ocean to the shallow areas without much time for adjusting to the pressure. Compared to the average human, the Corns were extremely fast and agile in the water. The Corn forces were further supplemented by Arc droids. These were streamlined and agile underwater droids armed with powerful laser cannons. They were comparable to B-2 super battle droids when it came to construction material and durability. This was partly due to the fact that they had to function in the depths of the ocean. Make no mistake, there is probably no other environment that humans are more inept at fighting in than in the deep ocean. We are terrestrial beings used to walking and running on the surface of a planet rather than wading and swimming through liquid. No matter how much training or equipment you have, you will be at a significant disadvantage from the get-go. As an infantry fighter, most of your training will be more or less useless in this type of scenario. While there is definitely some verticality during a land-based battle, fighting in the ocean is probably more similar to fighting in vacuum, and now you'll have to contend with threats from almost every direction. Although unlike vacuum battles, there still is a clear up and down for orientation purposes. Now, because you are out of your natural element, you will have to depend on a lot of gear and equipment to survive. Getting comfortable and very knowledgeable about that gear is the difference between life and death. The Grand Army of the Republic mostly relied on the Scuba Trooper armored suits for underwater missions. These suits were outfitted with 6 directional propulsion jets and a rebreather system. Although the entire suit is quite well designed, it's still a good idea to know all the in and outs of this suit and understand how to monitor and fix your own suit to the point where it becomes almost second nature. When you are fighting in the depths of the ocean and under heavy fire, you might not have enough time to return to the surface, so you might have to fix it on the spot in a very heavy pressured environment. Also, it might be a good idea to paint over the standard white color that armor comes in with something much darker and less reflective. Light functions a bit differently underwater, but white does tend to stick out quite easily still. Swimming and maneuvering with your propulsion pack also needs to become second nature. This also means being able to operate an OMS Devilfish sub to give yourself some additional speed. Now, in most of these kind of operations, you're going to start out by launching yourself into the ocean from the surface of the planet. During this landing period, not only is there no cover for you, you most likely will also be silhouetted against sunlight or moonlight. Along with your Scuba Trooper suit, you also will have a special energy rifle that is capable of firing projectiles underwater. A possible alternative to an energy weapon would be some type of projectile weapon with specially designed projectiles like a harpoon or a dart that can travel underwater. No matter what kind of ranged weapon you do use, you should expect to have limited range and potentially even slower firing speeds. Detonators, explosives, and concussion grenades are very useful underwater, especially if you have some kind of way to launch them. While shrapnel can't travel very far underwater due to the drag that water creates, the concussive forces of an explosion is far more deadly underwater. That's because it's relatively hard to compress water, which means the shockwave of an explosion will not be absorbed as easily by water as it will be in atmosphere. And this will translate into a far stronger pressure wave that can kill at a much farther range. This also means that you will have to be careful where you use a detonator so you don't kill yourself or friendly forces. The underwater environments, especially in the depths where the Corn cities are located, will be extremely dark due to the lack of light or sediment or underwater gases. Infrared goggles will go a long way in helping you identify where the enemy is, and in this kind of environment, you'll need every advantage that equipment can give you. So the Battle of Mon Cala has started, and you are now diving into the oceans alongside your clone trooper brothers. Since this is our first How to Survive series set during the Clone Wars period, let me just outline some important things you need to watch out for as a clone in general. 1, most likely you're being led by a Jedi, in this case Kit Fisto and Anakin Skywalker. Jedi are amazing combatants, they have supernatural abilities and powers. These enhanced abilities also make them incredibly incompetent leaders. Jedi will routinely carry out an impressive charge enhanced by the Force that will basically be impossible for non-Force users to follow. The problem is that most clones are obedient and loyal to a fault and will try their best to follow their Jedi generals, which oftentimes leads to massive casualties. So you're kind of caught in a really bad situation as a clone trooper. You almost have to be a hero because you're designed to be a hero, and if you don't act like a hero, you're going to stand out. You also might find yourself isolated from your comrades, which is also pretty dangerous in itself. As we mentioned before, in this kind of battle, the insertion period is amongst the most dangerous when you're going from the surface of the ocean into the depths. This part of the operation is kind of similar to an aerial assault usually carried out by paratroopers, except at a lot slower rate, which makes you a much easier target to hit. The Corns of the Separatist droid army most likely will be wading into depths, hidden in the darkness and behind cover, and they'll be able to easily spot you and fire at you. So during this phase of the operation, speed is essential to survival. While your stupid Jedi generals will most likely charge directly at the enemy formation because they only brought a melee weapon to a blaster fight, you're much better off trying to reach the surface of the planet and finding some cover. As an infantry soldier in an exotic environment, stick to what you know the best. Get some dirt beneath your boots or flippers and find a way to keep yourself from being exposed to enemy fire. Let the enemy needlessly expose themselves by swimming around in the open. They are going to be a lot more aggressive and confident in their ability to maneuver around. After all, this is their home territory. Underwater, where your field of view and line of sight might be limited, it becomes even more important to coordinate with your squad members. While it's never a good idea to stay too static during the middle of a battle, finding a defensive position and holding it might be a better strategy in this case because of the enemy's advantage when it comes to maneuvering. Try to avoid the open sea as much as possible, and should you get stuck in the open sea, make sure you're using something like an OMS Devilfish sub to give you an extra boost. Smoke grenades also work quite well for concealment. If you are fighting alongside some other aquatic species like the Mon Cala or the Gungans, let them do the heavy fighting. They're better suited for this kind of operation. Your goal is not to spearhead an offensive, but to survive and keep your squad members alive. So guys, that is our analysis of the Battle of Mon Cala. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to understand your limitations in such an alien battlefield. The idea is know your limitations so that you can survive for the next battle. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of this awesome series. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.